All right, guys, I am so excited for this conversation. One of my favorite humans is joining us right here. We are talking with Vanessa McNeal. She is a powerhouse. Like, get ready. Just, put the seatbelt on, my friends. She is a powerhouse when it comes to helping high achievers break out of burnout, overwhelm, and internal blocks, and instead step into what she calls inner alignment. I feel more peaceful just even thinking about that phrase. So I love it. All right. Vanessa's not only about surface level tips and feel good fluff. Her work is rooted in science-backed strategies and real deal transformations. Just wait. You'll see what I'm talking about. She holds a master's in social work with a specialization in trauma-informed care, which I think has probably always been important, but maybe more important than ever. Plus, I'm very proud to say she is a certified elite life coach. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. She speaks on big stages around the country, and she brings the kind of clarity and tools that help you to move forward with authenticity and purpose. I'm so excited for this conversation, so let's get to it. Vanessa, welcome finally to Dream
Thanks for
Big 2,
having
my
me.
friend.
I know.
Come on. I'll tell you what. Now, in full transparency, like we connected initially because you came and we got to work together. I got to be your coach.
Yes.
I was honored to be your coach and continue to be your coach.
Yes.
As far as you were building your coaching and speaking business. And literally, I was thinking today, I'm like, gosh, that feels like a decade ago. But this was only a few years ago.
It really was.
But you are one of those people that it has been such an honor to get to work with. Because the minute I met you, I'm like, God, the world needs to be learning from this human.
Thank you.
It's so good to have this conversation and finally kind of like bring this around to get to talk about all this stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm pumped.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about it. Like you have so many topics, one of which I'm so excited to talk about because it's been lighting up kind of the speaking world. You've been engaging audiences all over talking about brain-based approaches to dealing and leading difficult team members. And I want to talk about that so much because I do think that that is a wildly important subject. But let's talk about you for just a second so people know kind of how you got here, because I call you a Renaissance person. Like you are an entrepreneur. You've had success in corporate. You've been a leader. You've been a highly effective salesperson. You've created documentaries. You've done all sorts of cool stuff. So what kind of brought you to finally saying, you know what, I need to be teaching some of the things I've been learning?
Yeah. For me, it started a long time ago. Since I was a kid, I knew when I was a kid that there's something different about me. And I remember my grandma used to say, like, everyone's different, honey. And I'm like, no, grandma, you really don't understand what I'm talking about. And I didn't know what it meant until much later. Like I was in speech class in high school, and it was something that I was like, I really, really like speaking. I really, really like leading. But it wasn't until later in my life when I was getting my master's that I started sharing my own personal story.
Yeah.
And that led into working in leadership positions, working in sales positions, and understanding the human mind. And the more that I did that, embodying it myself and wanting to share it out in the world, that's where it started.
It did. And it's kind of like I've told you this before, but for you, I've always gotten that sense of for such a time as this, that you have really taken the challenges and the opportunities that you faced. And now you're teaching on those things that really have unlocked a lot of like real deal strategies and freedom for people, especially for leaders. And I know you do speak on a number of fascinating topics. It was a real challenge to go, we could talk about everything. What are we going to talk about? But for you, I know that people have really been responding to kind of this conversation around leading difficult team members. Like for you, why is that so important?
Yeah, it's so important because we live in a world where we have to coexist. And now more than ever, it feels like it's more difficult to do that in the real world, in our personal lives, but also with our coworkers and people out in public.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's paramount that we understand each other and work with each other differently.
Yeah, I love that. And it's fascinating. I mean, we live in a really interesting time, which I know is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
There's some times where I'm like, maybe it'd be okay to be a little more boring times, but the era that we live in, very interesting. And just in the world of, even social media, politics, all of those things, I would say there's always been divisions between humans, right? Since the dawn of time. But I would say that we're more things are playing into our lives that can definitely make us divisive. And I know for you, a lot, a passion is to go beyond what a lot of people teach when they're trying to help leaders to deal with negative or difficult team members. I think a lot of people are like, well, just fix the person, right? Or try to give them kind of fluffy strategies. But you're like, nah, let's go after the brain science. Let's actually give you real tools that you can use. And what I love about what you teach is it can help team members. It can help efficiency. It can help you hit your goals, all those things. But these are also things that you can use across the board with family and friends and navigating the world at large, all that stuff. So let's start cracking open that toolbox. Because I know the minute I said, difficult team members, difficult employees, all that stuff, everybody probably turned up their volume a little bit going, oh, this is what I need, right? Because we've all got that person, at least one, right? Whether we're leading them or co-working with them or navigating them in the neighborhood, right? We've all got that person. So where do you start? Because I know you really do start differently. Where do you start? If it's that leader, that somebody that you're working with in your team or that coworker that's across the aisle from you, where do you start when it comes to dealing with that difficult person?
So I start by teaching people how to understand their nervous system states and the nervous system states of those they are around.
Yeah.
So everyone has 3 primary nervous system states, and every action, every thought, every behavior is all dependent on which state that you're in. So if leaders can understand what states their team members are in, they can help identify, where they're at and how to help them get to a higher state so that there's more, like you said, communication, effectiveness on the team, higher performance. So that's where I start.
I love that. And it's starting understanding your own nervous system states as well as possibly what that person that you're interacting with is dealing with as well. So talk to us about that. Like if we're going to become more aware, because I agree with you. Nervous system is so important, but it often happens at a subconscious level.
It does.
We feel it, but we're not always aware of it. So for that leader, for that individual, where do you start there to be able to say, okay, these things are important. How do we get going?
Yeah. So what you just said around, I help them start to see themselves first.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times the way that we're feeling creates this lens or this filter of how we see other people. So when I'm facilitating workshops or trainings about this, I like to say, what annoys you the most about other people? That's where I start, because it's so easy to say, Mitch is so high strung. He's so high energy. He's just this. And it annoys me. He's so annoying. He's so difficult to work with. Right. But if I could see you as a mirror into where I'm dysregulated, then we can actually have a deep and meaningful conversation, because it's not a Mitch problem. It's not something that you're doing wrong because you're so positive and high energy. What about me has resistance to being that way? So that's where I start with leaders. Start with yourself, because the nervous system sees the world in 2 very black and white states. It's either safe or unsafe. It's either safe or dangerous.
Yeah.
So if the nervous system isn't in a place of safety, if it's not in a place where it's open, everything and everyone starts to feel like a threat.
Yeah.
So we want to start with leaders seeing themselves, understanding what nervous system state that they're in, and getting their nervous system to a place of safety.
Okay. See, I knew we were going to need 4 hours on this. Like you're dropping bombs here in the best of ways. So let's stop for just a second, because what you just said right there is nervous system identifies, am I safe? Am I not safe? Right. And the neurosystem is impressive, incredible. It is so good at so many things, but it's not great at knowing what's real and not real. Right.
Absolutely.
So let's just dive into that for just a second. Identifying safe versus not safe, unsafe. How do we do that? Like, because again, a lot of this is happening by habit or at a subconscious level. So like, I'm sure a lot of people are like, ooh, boy. I think I feel unsafe a lot, right? Like,
absolutely.
So help us through that, because that's huge.
It is so big, and it is very it can be murky, because what our nervous system does is that they're like real threats and they're imagined threats, essentially.
Yes.
And our nervous system, its number one job is to keep us safe. It doesn't want us to repeat any past embarrassment, threat, challenge, fear, anything. So even if something right now is reminding us of something that embarrassed us, guilted us, anything in the past, it's going to feel unsafe. And it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined, essentially. And it takes that past problem and it pulls it into the now.
Yeah.
So the number one way to be able to understand the difference is to first identify, like, what exactly are your triggers and where are they coming from? Because the brain is just wildly impressive, and something that could have happened in your first job with a leader that was actually a threat before. Maybe you were talked down upon, or you received a bad performance review, and now your current boss calls you in for a performance review, and they gave you a slight indication that you might have done something wrong. The nervous system's going to go, like, I don't like that. This is terrifying.
Warning, warning. Yeah.
Exactly. Even though that's not real right now. And what you have to do again is go back to creating more safety in your body, creating more safety within your nervous system, so that when that happens, you can get to a state of regulation again.
Yeah, that's big. So let's break that down. So let's say a trigger happens. And I know trigger, it's funny because even the word trigger can trigger people, right?
Yes,
because
exactly.
It seems like, we have those extreme cases of somebody losing their mind and it becomes a viral video, or somebody stole a, foul ball from a little kid and it becomes a, viral video. So like the word trigger can trigger, right?
Yeah.
But what we're talking about here is you're walking down the hallway at work, somebody shoots you a weird look.
Exactly.
They know they're dealing with a bad burrito from the night before, but you're like, oh my gosh, they just gave me stink eye. Do we have a problem, right?
Exactly.
And your body all of a sudden at a subconscious level really shifts into I'm unsafe, right?
Exactly.
So let's talk about even as a leader, you might have a trigger of a subordinate disrespecting you, or you might have a trigger of something a leader did to you. And now you're triggered because somebody else is seeming to do that to you. All those kinds of things, right? So let's just say a trigger happens.
Right.
What do? Because you got a deep toolbox when it comes to, let's get us back to feeling safe. So what are some of the things you do for a leader to help them deal with their triggers first?
The first thing that I would do is tell them to work with their body. So 80% of the information that's being filtered out about what is safe and what is not comes from the body. Only 20% comes from the mind. That's why if you're freaking out about a talk that you have, and I'm like, bitch, you've been doing this for decades. You got this. It might help a little bit, but your nervous system is still going to feel unsafe. That's because most of the information about what's safe and what's not is in your body. So you want to work with your body and do body regulation tools. So that looks like things that we already know about, like breath work, meditation, mindful practices. And it's stuff that, we've heard about it and it's like, oh, that's fluffy, but it really makes the difference, because if you can get your body back to a regulated state, then you can start working with the mind. Then you can start working with all of these other parts of ourselves. But it does start with the body in terms of safety.
I think that's so powerful, because I do think most people think it's the reverse. Like if I can get my thoughts right, if I can get my thinking right, then I can really lose the heart rate and I can, feel more confident and all those things. But it is, the body can overpower the mind to absolutely convince it is unsafe. So I know you have done a lot of work on this. Like you've literally traveled the globe to learn different strategies. What's one of your go-to non-weird breathing strategies? Because I know like you've gone to different parts of the world, learned some amazing things. Some of them are incredibly powerful, but you probably couldn't do them in your office or at your cubicle, that kind of stuff. But for you, what's one of your go-tos for bringing you back to center in a non-awkward way?
Yeah, totally. Super simple. What I do in some of my workshops is I just have everyone close their eyes, deep breath in through their nose, exhale out of their mouth. And we start at the feet. We relax every muscle in the feet. We travel up to the ankles, relaxing ankles, knees, legs, hips, and we just go all throughout the body, prompting each body part and every muscle that connects with it to calm. And people are like ready for a nap after we do that. And that's
it's amazing. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen you do this, and like it's funny because I think some people think, oh, I need to have a yoga mat and I need to have
No.
45 minutes, but you can do this literally. Like I've seen you transform a room in a minute.
Hmm.
If people really give themselves permission to just
Exactly.
sit, like they can close their eyes, they don't have to close their eyes, but it
Yep.
is that intentional breathing and just saying, okay, my feet are going to relax, my
Yep.
ankles are going to relax, and you don't even have to go. I've seen it. Like you don't have to go all the way to the head, right?
No.
But just even relaxing the legs and relaxing the hips, it's amazing. Such a simple thing can
Exactly.
have a profound impact in a minute or two.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's very primal for us to work with our body. I think about if out in the wild, you'll see a deer crossing the road and almost getting hit by a car. The first thing that they do after they survive that is they shake their body. That would
Yeah.
be another super simple, kind of weird thing to do if you're around other people, but
Exactly. Maybe go to the bathroom, get in a stall, right? Yeah,
exactly. But
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
super primal to do, and it's what animals do in the wild. They don't carry stress, they don't carry past incidences or experiences the way that they do because they release it out of their body and they move on with their day. But we don't do that. We hold on to everything, we repeat everything, and it creates more stress and tension for us.
Okay. I love it. So, all right, that is a major tool in the toolbox. Now it's one of those that if we, as the leader, as the person that's going to impact the room, the team, whatever it is, we can do some basics to get ourselves back, especially if we feel triggered. Now, what's the next step? If we know we've got a challenge coming up, whether it's a difficult conversation with a difficult person or whatever it might be, what's that next step when it comes to the nervous system and those states? What do you recommend next?
So once we work with the body, I think that there's cognitive regulation that we could do. And those are simple questions, but powerful questions around, is this challenge real? Is it imagined? If it's real, what can I do about it? Just working yourself through those mental questions once the body has relaxed. And then it's understanding, what are the nervous system states of my team members? And what kind of conversation am I walking into? Is this someone that is burnt out because they've been on a 3-week run of a project and they're not going to be at a state of safety? How can I create psychological safety in the conversation? And thinking about bringing in tools like nonviolent communication, where you're observing what you need from that person, letting them know how you feel in a non-threatening way, and then being very clear about what you're asking of them.
Yeah.
Because when you're working with people that are quote unquote difficult, they're not difficult because they necessarily woke up one day and decided to be. They're
Right.
just dysregulated.
Yep. Yep. So I love, there's just so much there. So I love that initial strategy of just asking yourself, is this real or imagined? And I know you know me, I'm a recovering worrier, right? I don't have it whooped, but I'm getting better every day, right? But I know for me, that's a really powerful exercise. And it's even more powerful. Like I can do it quickly. I can do that in a matter of 30 seconds to a minute. But if I've got a couple of minutes, I know even just grabbing a sheet of paper and writing it out is also one of those things that really helps. And I do this with a lot of my leaders as coaching clients to say, hey, if you need a heartbeat to just, especially if they know they're gearing up for or they're coming out of one of those experiences, to just take a second, breathe, and then journal just even for a second, it really does help to bring that together. But let's talk about what you just brought up of kind of thinking through empathetically the kind of the nervous system states where our employee, our team member, our coworker might be in. How accurate can people be as far as you said there were 3 states. Let's talk about those and then being able to say, okay, where do I think they're at? How often, or let's talk about the states and then let's talk about how accurate we tend to be when we're guessing what somebody else is dealing with.
Yeah. So there's 3 states. The first one, which is the goal that everyone wants to be at, would be ventral. So that is like a Mitch Matthews state. Open, vulnerable, connected to self and other people. That's where innovation happens. That's where engagement happens. So that's where someone feels safe.
Yep.
But when we have stress or when we have worry creep in or we have something that quote unquote triggers us, we can drop down into what's called sympathetic state. So that's where fight or flight lives. That's where the nervous system's like, okay, there's danger and I need to do something and I need to do it right now. I have a presentation coming up. I have a difficult conversation with a coworker. And so you start to notice people talk faster. They're moving faster. They can't disconnect from work. There's a lot of anxiousness, anxiety, racing thoughts that live there. So you start to know that someone's there because they have so like an over excess of energy and they don't really know what to do with it.
Yep.
So that's how you would know in
Yep.
terms of watching someone's behavior. But then people can't live in that state for very long because they're going to crash and burn. And then they drop down to the next nervous system state, which is called dorsal. And that's a shutdown state. So this is someone that they've been running. They've been probably crushing it for a long time, but now they're just burnout.
Yep.
They're shutting down. They're having a hard time connecting with themselves, other people. They're disengaged. They're gossipy. They're just not, it's like the lights are on, but no one's home.
Exactly right. Easily agitated, easily exhausted, short with people, not as creative as they want to be, all those things, right? And it's interesting because it's less, I would say the dorsal, because I've experienced all three, right? But I would say the dorsal feels less frenetic. Right.
Exactly.
But it's still, it's just as exhausting, if not more. So I love this. And I appreciate that, there are kind of telltale signs for those three states.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about that coworker or that employee or that team member, what would you say, what's one thing that increases your chances of being accurate in knowing which state that person is in?
I would say the best way to know is to ask them.
But that's what I was wondering you were going to say. I thought that's
absolutely.
what you'd say. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I wondered, what's the best way if you can tell somebody is maybe in that fight or flight mode and they're, frenetic energy, whether it's something that you did or something that's happening in the environment or whatever, what are some ways to ask that in a way that doesn't make them feel more unsafe? What are some ways to bridge that conversation without it seeming accusatory or attacking, those kinds of things?
Yeah. And that's where I talk about nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication is the way to approach difficult conversations with ease, with gentleness, with empathy. And it looks something like, hey, Mitch, I noticed and I've observed the last couple of weeks your mood has been really low. And I know that that's not like you because you're like a very jovial person. And so I would start there with just an observation of just what's real for me. And then I go next into the I feel part. I feel a little worried about you because it's not typically like you to be shut down or not interested in your work. And then I move into these other states where I talk about what I need from you. If I was
what
your
might that look
boss,
like?
Yeah. If I was your boss, I would say, I need to know what you need in order to produce 3 more podcasts by the end of the month because we have this deadline. And then I go into the request. So here's my request from you. By the end of the month, I need X, Y, and Z by this amount of time. We're not really doing that in our conversations. And that's why people are getting frustrated. They're getting shut down by conversations. They feel misunderstood. And then people don't get what they need. And people are still feeling unsafe.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. So I would imagine some of this depends on the amount of time that you have, the environment. Probably these conversations are best not in the hallway, but in a protected space, all those kinds of things. But when you're walking through those, those steps and what's funny about even a phrase in the season that we live in, even the phrase of nonviolent communication could in fact be a trigger for some people like, oh, this is rainbows, butterflies, little ponies. But we're talking about science-based strategy here,
right?
Because nonviolent doesn't mean you're going to club them over the head. But to our sympathetic nerve system, that's what our body is getting ready for. Even though you don't have a club behind your back, your nervous system is trying to register, is this person going to club me to death, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's a really important terminology to say, this is science-based, people. So in that kind of in the best, let's talk about the ideal setting. In the ideal setting, if you were walking through that to say, offer the observation, so it's not accusatory, but just say, hey, this is something I'm seeing, Is it good in your estimation to stop and say, am I right? Or what, how are you?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. Is it okay to check in and kind of like
Absolutely.
have conversation around it as opposed to just running through the 4 steps?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely have a conversation. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what's real for you? What's
Mm,
showing up for you?
yeah.
Very powerful questions. And I think it would lead into more understanding, because what we do, especially as leaders, when we're working with people, we have a lot of assumptions about why they're not doing what they should be doing. So and so showed up late. They're late for our morning meeting. It creates tension. Other people are getting upset. We just start to assume that they don't care about their jobs. So, hey, I noticed that you were late for work, and, we start at 9 o'clock sharp. What's showing up for you that's preventing you to getting here on time?
Yeah.
We don't do that. We just go straight into accusation, and we don't get clear about what we need from that person, and we don't share a request either.
Yep. Yep. And to your point, it's probably because we're in, that sympathetic fight or flight
Yes.
mode ourselves, because
Yes.
if Jimmy doesn't show up on time, that's going to reflect poorly on me. Or if Jimmy doesn't do this thing, then our team is not going to look good, or we're not going to be able to perform. So like, we might be functioning from fight or flight, which is not going to allow us to be our best leader, to be our best human, all those types of things, and or draw out the best from others. So I love how this starts with us, to the best of our ability, getting into that ventral, that safe zone for ourselves. So I think that that's wildly important. Now, what if in the ideal scenario, we have enough time? In the ideal scenario, we have a private setting where we can have these conversations. In an ideal setting, we're able to actually create communication in a safe place where we can have breakthrough and true communication and connection. That's ideal.
Yeah.
What about those less than ideal scenarios where maybe you got a shorter time frame, or time is of the essence and the building's on fire?
Yeah.
What's a tool in the toolbox to be able to still move through this process, or help the person and or potentially deliver whatever they need to get done, but navigating kind of the real world? Not to say that the other scenario is not real world, but it's ideal. And in the real world, we don't always get ideal. So what are a couple of tools for the toolbox in less than ideal scenarios?
I'm going through the filing cabinet, and I still feel like my best pull is nonviolent communication. And I say that because I could tell you what I'm observing, what I'm feeling about what I'm observing, what exactly I need from you, and what I can request, all in the matter of a 30-second, one paragraph email or in-person communication, because we need all of those things. We need to show someone what we see. We need to tell them why we feel the way we feel about it, because it matters, and we have to name it. And we have to tell people what we need and what exactly we're requesting, so they know what actions to take.
Yeah.
And so I guess if the building's on fire, we would have to just talk really fast when we're doing that. But
yeah, but it is what I think you make a great point, though, is, you can still walk through this process and do it
so
quickly.
Fast.
It's not as ideal of having a true connection conversation, all those things. Now, as I hear you saying this, though, like, I know now why your speaking is on fire, like, because everybody wants to be talking about this. And I would think that it's truly powerful for an individual leader to understand this. But if a whole organization understands this, and everybody understands the steps, like, the leader's not just being weird, this is brain-based strategy, and it can be a shared language, right? So talk to me a little bit about maybe something that, whether it's a team or an organization, somebody that heard this and applied this.
Well, yeah, I have a great story for this. And I also want to just do a side share that some people might be listening and thinking, like, it's not my responsibility, or I don't want to put in the time to care about someone else's nervous system.
Especially that person, right?
Yeah.
Like, that freaking person is annoying as all get out. They're not pulling their weight, right? Like, it would be easy to put that person in that category. So what do you say to that when we feel that?
Well, yeah, what I would say to that is, it might not be your quote unquote responsibility, but it is in your best interest, especially as a leader.
Come on.
It might not be fun. It might not be the conversation that you want to have after you have your lunch, but it is in your best interest to make sure that there's psychological safety on your team, because when people are safe, they're more engaged, they're more productive, they're more bought in. and you have higher retention. There's so much research about it.
That's
and
good.
So that's why it matters. But a story that I have to demonstrate this. So I was doing a 3-hour workshop on how to work with difficult people, and we were going through body-based regulation tools. And so I was doing my body-based regulation, and I had everyone close their eyes. I was walking them through a journey that they could do, sort of like a meditation style. And there's a guy in the front, and he did not want to close his eyes. He's fidgeting, and you could just tell he's pissed off. He's like,
yeah, right. Like,
I don't want to be here.
I got fight or flight right here.
Oh, yeah. So it goes well. And I'm checking in with everyone, how is everyone feeling by a show of hands? How better regulated do you feel? Everyone raises their hand, but him. And he blurts out, you know what, Vanessa, I have to tell you, I have so many better effing things that I could do other than this. And I knew in that moment that I had a very, very important decision to make. I could either internalize that and be offended, or I could just get really curious about what he said. So I said, oh my gosh, thanks so much for sharing that with me. Tell me what's underneath that. And he was like, well, when you told me to relax, I instantly didn't want to. I felt like the more you told me to relax and the more you walked me through that process of regulating, my just nervous system took off. And through this wildly vulnerable conversation that we have in this huge group setting, he ends up saying to me, I just realized that I don't feel safe relaxing. And that's all that it is. And he was like, I just realized that I'm the difficult person on my team, and I'm high strung, and I have anxiety, and I'm pushing everyone. It's because I don't want to relax. It feels safer for me to be on edge. It feels safer for me to go out into the world on fire. So it was this huge breakthrough moment for him to be like, it wasn't your meditation that was silly or anything like that. It was me. I don't feel safe calming down.
Isn't that amazing? And he had that revelation, like you guys had that interaction in front of not just a few people, but a lot of people, and they were his peers.
Yes.
But I think that speaks to the power of you not getting offended, but you getting curious, right? And leaning in with those, the strategies you were just talking about. And talk about a less than ideal, situation or scenario to have a real conversation. But because you engaged with him, he felt that. You put him at ease. He could have that revelation. I mean, that's huge. So well done on that.
You.
But like, that's a beautiful example of oftentimes a leader like that. And we've all probably been there when we're at the end of the day and frazzled or whatever. But he probably thought his team sucks. Like everybody's aggravated each other, all this. It's everybody else that's the problem.
Yes.
And in that moment, he realized, whoa, this actually starts with me.
Exactly. And it's such a great example going back to it starts with us as leaders. Imagine if I wasn't in a regulated state. Imagine if that just instantly sent me somewhere else. And I dropped my curiosity. I dropped my understanding and my empathy.
Yeah.
I was able to maintain a state of regulation. And again, that people think that this is fluffy stuff, and it's really not, because that conversation could have gone in a million different directions if I went into fight or flight, or if I was like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this and I need to recover, and what did I do wrong? And or if I shut down completely and I was like, oh, that sucks that someone told me that they'd rather do a million other things than listen to me
in front of the rest of my audience. Thank you very much. Right. Yeah.
And it was so cool because 2 of his coworkers or 3 of his coworkers were there, and they were a part of the conversation. They were like, yeah, it is really hard for him to calm down, and here's how it impacts me. And he came up to me after the event and he was like, I've done therapy, I have done coaching, I've done leadership development for years, and nothing was more impactful for him than that. And all he wanted was safety. So we think safety is fluff. We think this is all but it's really not. It's what people are searching their whole lives for, is to be heard, to be understood, and for people to get curious about them.
Yeah. And I think as a leader and as a human, one of the greatest gifts we can give somebody is to truly see them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what you're equipping people to do. And we're going to have you come back, because this is so good. Let's come back to the leader, because it really does. And I love how this toolbox, I think leaders mostly say the tools in my toolbox need to be so that I can fix others. Right.
Yeah.
And there is an element to that. There's no doubt. Right. But what you're saying, and I think it's so powerful and so true, is the most important tools start with us. Like, how are we doing? How are we showing up safe? Right. and feeling confident and strong and all of those things. So let's come back to that, because like that's a great example. You had every opportunity to lose your mind in front of that group. Now, of course, you were paid really well to not do that. And you were paid, and you've worked these skills. At the same time, though, like you just had a baby recently, I mean, it's one of those things where it's not like your world pushes pause when you go and speak to an organization. And it's like, hey, we have 48 hours of no problems for speaker because I'm speaking. It just doesn't work that way. So your world. So let's put one more tool in the toolbox. We talked about like breathing exercises. What's one more tool that a leader could use, whether it's 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours? What's another tool to help us as leaders, the people that are going to impact the room, to come back to safety?
I think it's recovery. And there's so many different ways that recovery looks, but we are not recovering from our days. And I think that that's the biggest piece, is that we're not doing the self-reflection to say, where in my day did I feel unsafe? We often stay there and we get stuck there. We don't have the recovery, like we don't have a shock absorber that takes us back up the ladder. And so I would say it's the self-reflection around thinking about where in our day that we felt stuck, or we felt like we had to speed up, or where we crashed all the way down. So that we can get back to a place of safety, because we just are always running. So I think that it could just look like 5 minutes in your car before you go inside and you have to be a parent. That could look like you doing that before you go into work. But we don't pause. We don't press pause in this world. We're on our phones that have our emails that have all of this stuff. And again, it seems simple and it feels like people have heard it before, but these are tools that people actually aren't using.
Yep. It's absolutely. And it is. It's one of those things that some of the most powerful tools are absolutely free. Some of the most powerful tools are readily accessible. I know one of the executives, he was an entrepreneur that I coached, and very demanding life. Everybody needed him. He loved that. He kind of loved, his business kind of felt like you were running through an ER, and he loved that kind of frenetic energy, but it was wearing and a lot was on him. And so one of the things we did was we isolated his car for 15 minutes, because his commute was 15 minutes, and his car, no emails, no voicemails, only 80s rock.
I love that. Yeah.
And it's one of those where like that became his bubble, going to work and coming home. He's like, you know what? It doesn't matter what kind of crisis, what fires I dealt with that day, people offended me or I offended them, whatever it might be. Got a little 80s rock on the way home, and I was fine by the time I got the garage, right? So I love it's, and it's what I love about what you're saying too is that some of these tools are universal, but how we apply them are unique.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better.
So it's finding that thing that works for us. I know for me, writing down just like 3 things that actually worked from the day, no matter how good or bad the day was, like finding 3 things I'm grateful for, but it's more like what were those moments where things just clicked and it worked, right? And inventorying that's a beautiful thing of ushering your nervous system back to being in observation mode, like you're saying, being curious, all of those things. And I mean, hey, I'm a big fan of going to Fiji or a mountaintop resort or whatever it is, right? Like do it as often as you can, but these are the kinds of things you can incorporate into your day-to-day.
Anywhere.
It doesn't take a plane trip. It doesn't take anything. The other thing is like what we tend to do at the end of the day is check email one last time or check our, social media feed one more time. And all that's doing is just reminding of us all the places we could feel unsafe again. So I love this. I love that. Like Vanessa, like I love where you're at with your life and your business and all that stuff. And I most of all appreciate you apply these things. Like I know you and I both know a lot of speakers, and there's a lot of speakers, not a lot, but many speakers that know the stuff, but don't use the stuff. You use the stuff.
Thank you.
As we're wrapping this, I don't want to, but as we're wrapping up this conversation, what's a strategy that you use to make it safe in your home, to make it safe in your heart? What's something you lean on? Because, I mean, hey, just like everybody else, you're going to step up in front of 1,000 plus audience next week, all that stuff. Like, what's something you do to bring you back?
Yeah. This is a great question because I do have a really big talk next week that
You
I'm
do?
totally freaked out about. And I'll be speaking
excited
to
and going to throw up just a little bit, right? Like, yeah.
Well, yeah. And so I'll be speaking to 1,200 people next week. It's the biggest audience I've spoken to so far. And what I'm going to do, what I've done a million times between the time I first landed the talk and until the time I touched the mic, is that I'm going to live in the tension. We don't live in the tension enough. We just want to just everything to be like nice and feel good. And I am practicing living in the tension of feeling so incredibly excited, but so incredibly scared at the same time, and validating every emotion between now and next Wednesday. We don't do that. We don't like to sit in discomfort. We don't like to feel any pain. We want everything to just feel good. So we're like constantly like coaxing ourselves and coddling ourselves in a way like, oh, something feels uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to scroll.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to get that coffee.
Distract. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to feel every single feeling. I'm going to honor every single part that shows up, all of my scared parts, all of my terrified to get up in front of the crowd parts. I'm just going to be with them. And I'm going to say, all of you are welcome here. You all have a voice. But the most important thing I'm going to do is just come back to center every time and still show up and crush on Wednesday. So that's what I do. I live in the tension all the time.
I love that. And to embrace it, right? Like to be able to say, hey, just because I'm feeling tension, I love Jim Collins talked about that in Good to Great, where he talked about basically leaders he found had to be able to have 1 foot in chaos and 1 foot in peace and just go, just because I'm feeling tension is not bad.
No.
Tension is an indicator of light on the dash. It's something I need to pay attention to. That might mean I need to do something about it, but also, I think he made the point, and you've made this point when we've talked about it before too. It's that thing of going, the difference between absolute fear and absolute excitement sometimes is 1 degree different.
Yeah.
So to go, wait, am I feeling excitement or am I going to feel fear or am I feeling fear? Maybe both, right?
Exactly.
So I love that. And you will kill it next week. So I love it. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Like, Vanessa, what's the best way? Where should people, I know people as they listen to this, they're going to want to find out more about you. Where's the best place to start?
My website, VanessaMcNeal.com, has all my speaking booking information and coaching booking information as well.
It looks awesome. It looks so good. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for bringing the gold, my friend, and for being generous and for doing what you do in the world and for the world. I appreciate you.
Right back at you.